A Lamp from the Warlock's Tomb by John Bellairs, Chapter 2. A week later, around 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night, Anthony was in the chemistry lab of the high school. All around him were students setting up their own exhibits. One group was working on a display of glass tubes filled with gases that glowed different colors when an electrical current was passed through them. Another bunch of kids was making a dust explosion inside a potato chip can, and still another was setting up an induction coil. Anthony was all by himself at a long marble-topped table. The other boy, who was supposed to help him make signs for the exhibit, had not shown up. All the pieces of the exhibit were there: the red clay lamp that burned vegetable oil, the rushlight with its long, thin taper, a candle that was banded to show different times of the day as it burned, and the oil lamp that Anthony had borrowed from Miss Eels. With an art pen in his hand and a bottle of black India ink nearby, Anthony carefully lettered the signs that were going to be used for the exhibit. Every now and then he would glance up at the Dutch china lamp that burned quietly nearby. The slender chimney was filled with a yellowish glow. The little wisps of black smoke coiled up steadily. Anthony had fussed with the little wheel that adjusted the wick until he had the lamp burning just the way he wanted it, but he did not plan to keep it going very long. He didn't have an extra supply of wicks, and he wanted the lamp to burn for at least an hour on the day of the exhibit, which was tomorrow. He was proud of the lamp, at least he tried to be, but he had begun to understand the way Miss Eels felt. There really was something unpleasant about this odd little antique object. Anthony couldn't have said why he disliked the lamp, but he would be glad when the exhibit was over with, and he could take it back to his friend. The door at the far end of the lab slammed 3 or 4 times. The other students were starting to leave. Anthony labored on, moving his pen slowly over the white cardboard. "Hey, Tony, come on, let's knock off and go down to Swenson's for an ice cream," said Todd Hoopenbecker, a big red-haired kid who was sort of a friend of Anthony's. Anthony looked up and sighed. "You go ahead, Ted," he muttered sadly. "I've got 2 more of these signs to do. I'll be down a little later. Right, kid? Don't work too hard." And with that, Ted was gone, closing the door behind him. Anthony looked around. He was alone in the lab now. He shrugged and went back to work, dipping his pen in the black ink. Anthony was a loner. He didn't mind doing things by himself. But as he worked, the silence of the dark, closed-up high school building grew on him. He imagined that he heard doors opening and shutting in the distance. In his mind's eye, he saw shadowy figures walking up and down the long moonlit corridors that lay beyond the lighted room he was in. The flame of the oil lamp began to flicker, which was odd because there wasn't any draft, and the glass chimney was there to protect the flame. Anthony reached out to twiddle the adjusting wheel, but as he did, somebody knocked on the door. Anthony jumped. He lurched forward and nearly knocked over the lamp. But luckily, he grabbed it in time and set it back on its base. Then he turned and went to answer the door. When he opened it, he heaved a sigh of relief. It was Mr. Yurchak, the night watchman. He was a short, fat, elderly man with a rumply blue uniform, and he smoked the worst-smelling cigars in the world. Anthony liked Mr. Yurchak because he was pretty easygoing. "Hi, Tony," wheezed Mr. Yurchak cheerfully. "Burning the midnight oil, eh?" Anthony glanced back over his shoulder at the lamp. He didn't know whether Mr. Yurchak was trying to be funny or not. "Yeah, I guess you could say that," he muttered, smiling wryly. "I have to make all these signs, and it's taken a pretty long time, but I'll be out of here in another 5 minutes." "I'll time you," chuckled Mr. Yurchak, and he winked. With a cheerful wave, he turned away. Then he stopped. He remembered something. "Oh, by the way, Tony," he added, pointing at the dark corridor, "when you come out, use the main door. All of the other ones are locked up tight. I'll be out in front of the building having a smoke." "Okay, Mr. Yurchak," said Anthony, and he closed the door softly. His shoes squeaked as he walked back to the lab table. Why did he feel so depressed? An awful heaviness lay upon him, like the feeling you have when someone close to you has died. Grimly, Anthony picked up the pen and started making letters again. 5 minutes passed. It seemed like hours, but finally he was done. Heaving a deep sigh, Anthony corked the ink bottle and wiped the pen dry. As he put out the lamp, his hand happened to brush the white china base, and he was startled by the chill he felt from it. This was very odd. The lamp had been burning for some time, and the base ought to have been warm. But Anthony wasn't going to hang around and brood about the lamp. His job was done, and he was going home. Whistling softly, he picked up the flashlight. he had brought with him and strode out the door. He turned off the room lights and stepped out into the hall. Down the long corridor he walked, playing the beam of his flashlight all around. Anthony had been in the high school at night before when he tried out for the school basketball team, but he had never been this nervous. The classroom doors were locked tight, but he kept expecting them to fly open as he passed. This is ridiculous, he told himself. But ridiculous or not, he felt scared. He went down the wide, slippery staircase, along the shadowy main corridor toward the entrance. Squeak, squeak, squeak went his sneakers on the waxed tile floor. He passed the glimmering windows of the school office, pushed open the heavy door, and stepped out into the high columned porch. Where was Mr. Yurchak? Anthony flashed the pale ray of his light off to the right, and suddenly his blood froze. He was staring at a man, a short man, in a long black overcoat with tattered edges. The man's pale, freckled head was bald, and his eyes were small, crude, and beady. Across the man's face stretched a crisscrossing mass of black strands. They looked like spider webs. Anthony screamed. He dropped his flashlight and rushed blindly out between two columns. Something large lay in his path. He tripped over it and went sprawling. As he scrambled to his feet, he saw what he had fallen over. It was the body of Mr. Yurchak, who was lying on his face. Blind panic gripped Anthony, and he ran. He dashed 2 blocks over to Main Street and kept running till he saw the blue light outside the door of the police station, which was on the ground floor of the city hall. The sergeant at the desk looked up and gaped in astonishment as he saw Anthony reel in through the door. He was wide-eyed, red-faced, and panting. "Police! Help! He's dead!" gasped Anthony as he staggered forward and grabbed the top of the high desk. His legs felt weak and he had a pounding headache. "It's true! Please believe me!" he yelled. But for the time being, the policeman just stared. And that's the end of chapter 2.